You keep feeling like you're late. Late in life, late in success, late in becoming who you thought you'd be. And the worst part is, nothing is visibly wrong. You're working, you're moving, you're trying, but underneath everything, there's a quiet thought you can't shut off. I should be further ahead by now. And once that thought enters, it changes everything. A normal day starts to feel like failure. A small win feels meaningless. Even rest starts to feel like wasted time. But here's the part no one tells you. You don't feel behind because you are behind. You feel behind because you're measuring yourself against a timeline that was never yours. And until you question that timeline, you will always feel late. No matter how much progress you make, you cannot feel behind without a reference point, without a timeline, without a sense of, by now, I should be here. But where did that timeline come from? Did you choose it or did you absorb it? Because most of the time, you didn't create it. You inherited it from school, from family, from the people around you, from what you saw repeatedly. There is a structure that was never formally explained, but always present. You study, you find direction, you build stability, you grow, you settle, and attached to that structure, there is timing, not precise, but implied. By a certain age, you should have something, some clarity, some direction, some form of stability. And even if no one says it directly, you feel it in conversations. What are you doing now? Where is this going? Is this long term? What's next? These questions are not neutral. They assume something. They assume that your life is progressing in a visible, structured way. And when your path doesn't match that structure, something subtle happens. You don't feel wrong. You feel late. And over time, you internalize that. Now the pressure is no longer external. You apply it to yourself. You start asking, why am I not there yet? What am I missing? What am I doing wrong? And here's the critical mistake. You assume the timeline is correct, so the only variable left is you. But what if the timeline is wrong? Or more precisely, what if it was never yours? Because that timeline is not reality. It's a model, a simplified version of how life can unfold. And like every model, it only works under certain conditions. But you don't experience it as a model. You experience it as truth, something obvious, something unquestioned. So when your life doesn't match it, you don't question the model. You question yourself. You assume, I'm behind, I'm late, I missed something. But here's the shift. You are not behind. You are being measured against a timeline you didn't choose. And that measurement is constant. Every time you open your phone, you see it. Someone your age doing more. Someone younger, moving faster. Someone already where you thought you'd be. But what you're seeing is not a timeline. It's a result, a single point, taken out of a much longer process. You don't see how long it took. You don't see what didn't work. You don't see what they sacrificed. You only see the outcome, and your mind compares automatically. But the comparison is flawed because you are comparing their visible outcome to your invisible process, their highlight to your full reality, their result to your timeline. And that distortion creates the feeling because your process will always look slower than someone else's result. And when you compare those two, you always feel behind. Not because you are, because the comparison is broken. But there's another layer. You're not just comparing outcomes, you're comparing speed. How fast things are happening for other people. And speed is one of the most misleading variables because speed is visible, but process is not. You can see that someone got there faster, but you cannot see what they skipped, what they traded, what they had to ignore to move that quickly. Every fast path has hidden costs, but those costs are not visible from the outside. So your mind registers, they're ahead, but it doesn't register. At what cost? And without that second part, the comparison becomes incomplete. Now apply this to yourself. There are things you did slower, but understood better. Things you delayed, but avoided doing the wrong way. Things you took time on that gave you clarity others don't have. But those advantages are invisible, so they don't count according to the metric. And that's the real problem. You are using a metric that cannot measure your actual progress and then trusting its output. Because this isn't just about timelines, it's about measurement. You are constantly evaluating your life, using a system you didn't choose. Now think about this. There are entire phases of life that produce no visible outcome. Learning, exploring, failing quietly, changing direction. Externally, they look like nothing, but internally, they change everything. They change how you think, how you decide, how you interpret opportunities. And those changes don't show immediately. They accumulate later. But if you measure those phases with a metric designed for outcomes, they look like wasted time, when in reality, they are preparation. Now consider something else. There isn't one timeline. There are many. Different paths require different sequences. Different goals require different pacing. Different lives require different structures. But the moment you treat one timeline as universal, everything else looks like delay. Even when it's not. Someone moving fast in a structured path looks ahead. Someone building slowly looks behind. But they are not playing the same game. And that's the mistake. You are comparing different games, using the same scoreboard. One path rewards speed. Another rewards depth. Another rewards flexibility. If you use the wrong metric, one of them will always look like failure, even when it isn't. So the question becomes, what game are you actually playing? And more importantly, did you choose it? Because if you didn't choose it, you will always feel behind, no matter what you achieve. Now ask yourself something precise. Behind compared to who? Be specific. A friend? Someone online? Someone you imagined? Now ask yourself something more honest. How much of their life do you actually see? Because most of the time, you are not comparing your reality to their reality. You are comparing your full internal experience to their visible surface, their outcome, their title, their relationship, their lifestyle, but not their confusion, not their pressure, not what it cost them, not what they had to sacrifice to maintain it. And once you see that, the comparison starts to collapse. Because what you were calling being behind was often just incomplete information. Now go further. If you removed comparison completely, what would progress look like for you? Not in theory, specifically. What would forward mean? More control over your time, more clarity in your decisions, more alignment with what you actually want? Because once you define that, everything changes. Now you are not measuring yourself against an external sequence. You are measuring yourself against your own direction. And that removes the illusion, because now progress is not where you are relative to others. It's whether you are moving in a direction you actually chose. Now here's the final layer. Why does the feeling still come back? Because the old metric is still active. It doesn't disappear immediately. You've used it for years. It shaped how you evaluate yourself. So even when you understand this, it still runs quietly in the background. But now you can see it, and once you can see it, you can question it. Not every thought is true. Not every metric is valid. Not every timeline applies to you. So the next time you feel behind, pause. And don't ask, what am I doing wrong? Ask, what am I measuring this against? Because that's where the distortion is. And once you change the metric, the feeling changes. Not because your life changed, but because the way you evaluate it did. And that shift is what removes the pressure, not by moving faster, but by finally moving on your own terms.